Remaking Moana is insane. I think most people would agree. And the baffling decision to do so is the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to these polarizing Disney live action adaptations. So, I have an idea of how Disney can course correct and move forward with live action films based on their animated properties in a way that doesn't just regurgitate the same stories over and over again and gives audiences something new and exciting, but also doesn't go full on revisionist. And the specific example I'm going to give for my idea would kill multiple birds with one stone, addressing several issues and correcting multiple missteps that Disney has made, while simultaneously offering an exciting path forward, opening up new opportunities. Before I get into it, Disney most likely won't do any of what I say they should do in this video, but that's their problem. Disney currently is at a very low point in terms of success because they've been more focused on quantity over quality when it comes to their Marvel, Star Wars, and Disney proper projects. They've been pumping them out, expecting guaranteed success, but people are getting burnt out, becoming unimpressed with the very mid to subpar results of most of what's being released. Everything feels more like content creation rather than genuine filmmaking. And it's interesting how we've gotten to this point because only a few years ago, in 2019 specifically, Disney was an unstoppable force, on top of the world, guaranteed billion-dollar successes left and right, people excited and desperate to see what would come next. And most of the reason why the company was so triumphant was due to these live-action retellings of their most iconic beloved properties, stories and characters that not only have built and shaped the company, but hold a special place in most people's hearts. Most of the world recognizes these stories and characters specifically through the Disney interpretations of them because whatever classic public domain story Disney makes a film of becomes the ultimate definitive version. So yeah, the nostalgia factor is off the charts and people are curious and excited to see how these formative films translate to a more photorealistic world. What would everything look like if it were real? That's the billion-dollar question that initially had people flocking to cinemas to see their childhoods come to life, to experience them in a new way, to see a real-life fairy tale. And it appears that initial thrill is wearing off for most audiences. Though 2019 was the peak for Disney, it was also the start of their downfall. With Dumbo being a creative fumble, Aladdin being a mixed bag, and Lion King being straight up plagiarism that sucked the soul and artistry out of what it was replicating, these live action adaptations were putting a bad taste in people's mouths when they initially had such a promising start with the gorgeously magical Cinderella, the technologically groundbreaking Jungle Book, and even the flawed but still enchanting Beauty and the Beast. Back in that time, the future held so much potential, and people were eager to see how each adaptation would be approached. There was genuine hype around these films, despite there also being many hesitations. People were curious and intrigued, but now, after mostly unimpressive, underwhelming films being released that don't live up to people's own imaginations, there's a stigma, there's a negative reputation. People kind of know what to expect and can just assume that whatever adaptation comes out is going to be an imitation of its original animated version, but significantly more dull, more bland, bloated with hollow additions, with less magic, less artistry, less passion, less understanding of the story, just an ugly, muddy, empty recycling of what came before, or in cases like Mulan, butchering, tarnishing, and mishandling elements that were beloved to the point people are completely turned away from experiencing another potential disaster like that again. And this doesn't need to be the case. There are so many interesting opportunities in telling a beloved story in a new medium and leaning into the advantages of that medium, whether that be bringing out rich, sophisticated layers to the story or utilizing groundbreaking filmmaking technology. I don't think live-action adaptations of animated films are inherently much different than adapting an animated film into a Broadway musical or adapting a book into a film. And a live-action adaptation doesn't inherently erase or replace its animated counterpart. It should stand alongside it as a companion piece, simply another way to view the story and iconography, a new facet of the property's legacy. But that's absolutely not the way people are viewing these live-action adaptations, because the films usually tread way too closely to the blueprint of the animated versions and feel like they're made on autopilot. So whenever there's a misguided deviation from the original, or something that's executed with a lot less impact, they do give off the impression of being lazy, creatively bankrupt, hollow imitations, etc., etc. So yeah, these films don't have to live up to their poor reputations, but there's usually a tremendous lack of skill behind the camera that proves the preconceived notions of Disney live-action adaptations to be valid. And since most of the major Disney classics have already gotten the live-action treatment, and most were lackluster, mishandled, and people have given up on them ever living up to their own imaginations, we're past the point of no return, and I don't think that simply retelling the stories is the right way to go anymore. Even if it can be done right, it's been proven time and time again that it probably won't be, and people don't want to take a chance anymore to see something they're familiar with be retold in a way that does nothing for them. Apparently, not many filmmakers are able to bring something refreshing, creative, and original to a familiar story without butchering what made it so beloved, and on the other hand, apparently not many filmmakers are able to stay faithful to a story without it feeling stale, lifeless, and unoriginal, at least not the filmmakers Disney is hiring. So, Disney, take a break from directly adapting the same stories that you've already told, unless you find a way to skillfully, thoughtfully, creatively bring them to life with both reverence and originality. In the case of adapting Moana to live action, it's even a trickier situation, and it most likely won't work, not just because the animated film came out recently, but because the storytelling and filmmaking is already very similar to what you would see in a live-action film. Disney's earlier animated films leaned more into impressionistic storytelling that was simple but effective in being motivated by visuals, emotions, and abstract ideas, so there was more room for the live-action versions to flesh everything out and adjust everything to a more lifelike, multi-dimensional medium. If the live-action films just used the same exact scripts that were used for the animated ones, it just wouldn't work. Those scripts were written specifically for animated movies, and usually storyboards came before an actual script. And that's why when some of the live-action adaptations stick too closely to the originals, line for line, it doesn't feel right. There are tonal issues, there are clashing elements, everything seems to be falling flat. That's why you want to express the same ideas from the originals in a different way. You want to approach those ideas in a way that suits the different medium. You want to take the skeleton of these ideas and build something around it that's designed specifically for live action. But the script for Moana could have very well been made into a live-action film instead of an animated one, and you would have never known it was initially written for the medium of animation. So, what exactly would even be adjusted when translating Moana into live action? What would justify bringing it to a new medium? There's not a lot of room to play around with originality, and if you change things around and mess with the story, that's not going to go over well with people either, especially because it is so recent and fresh in people's minds, and already one of the most rewatched films ever in history. People are so familiar with it, I don't know how you change it without getting the Mulan backlash, and I don't know how you keep it as is without getting the Lion King backlash. And on top of all that, the animated Moana visually is already such a textured, three-dimensional looking film with very tangible environments, so The leap to live action is not as drastic either, and I won't get into the whole spiel of how contemporary animated films think they need to be more like live action ones to be deemed of value, but contemporary animated films are becoming more like live action films, so a live action Moana would not be such a different experience from the animated one. I don't know what point in time you are watching this video, but at the time of me making it, the live action Moana hasn't begun filming yet, though apparently they have already cast the titular role and just haven't announced who it is yet. So, unless Disney secretly has some genius idea for this adaptation that will completely justify its existence, which we all know is not likely, I propose that Disney recalibrates, takes the actress who has already been cast as Moana along with the entire production team, and reworks the project into something else. They can still utilize whatever costumes and sets and new songs they've already worked on, but they're not just gonna retell the same story they told less than a decade ago. What I propose they do is something that would redeem some of the major missteps they've taken, and would also settle some of the beef I have with them. I want you to keep an open mind and let me fully make my pitch before you decide how you would feel about this, because if done the right way, this would be an exciting path forward for Disney, keeping their iconic characters alive and relevant while utilizing them to bring attention to new stories. In this particular instance, I think they should rework the live-action Moana movie that's in development into an original epic oceanic fantasy adventure full of mythical creatures, ancient sea legends, and opulent kingdoms, with the lead characters being live-action Moana and Halle Bailey's Ariel. Yeah, we're going there. Even if you think it sounds hokey, this would be such a smart direction for Disney to go. Okay, so why is this the direction Disney should take? Why should these two characters specifically expand outside of their respective stories and unite in an original story? Many reasons. For one, since I don't think Moana should get a direct remake, and they've already cast someone to step into that massive role, probably a newcomer who has just been given the biggest opportunity of her life as a character who has had a major positive impact on the community she's a part of, and now gets to take that important role to a new place. I say, don't take that away from her. Let her play Moana, but let her play Moana in a new story that could take place before or after the events that have already been established in the animated movie. You can still have reprises of iconic songs from the original and have callbacks to beloved elements, but this time you don't know what journey she's going to go on or what exciting new places and obstacles she'll encounter, so you'll get to see the character come to life while experiencing something completely new. And, I mean, Marvel and DC characters are always put into new stories, and that's one of the reasons why the live-action films featuring those characters don't receive the same level of criticism as the Disney live-action ones, at least in terms of originality and creativity. I mean, the conversation certainly comes up when we see Batman's parents killed in a flashback for the millionth time, but for the most part, it's familiar elements in new situations with those films. And that's also why those characters can get away with being rebooted an infinite amount of times. Every new film is depicting the characters in a different scenario. And since superheroes are the more male-centric, masculine figures of our culture, and they make up the majority of massive blockbuster event movies, why not make more space for female-centric, feminine figures of our culture to build their own film franchises as well, and not just be restricted to their original stories they were established in? I mean, these ladies are some of the most recognizable, prominent, iconic characters in the world, yet we hardly know them. They've been confined to their original stories. If I walk down the toy aisle, there's a good chance I'll see Aurora more than I would if I watched her movie. From theme parks to merchandise to costumes to dolls, The Disney princesses are inescapable. They represent a massive part of girlhood, of childhood. They take up a pivotal space in the lives of so many kids, yet they've sort of become removed from the context of their actual films because their branding has overpowered what they're actually meant to represent. They're kind of just these entities that have been reduced to their looks, their designs. And not only would it be nice to recontextualize them by putting them in new narratives that highlight, amplify, and reinforce the different facets of their personalities and beliefs, so that kids can have a stronger understanding of what their role models actually stand for, but it's an excuse to utilize IP to have more major films with diverse female-centric leads. And I'm not trying to encourage capitalism or Disney supremacy, but this would also strengthen their brand by offering new opportunities to showcase their iconic characters in fresh, unexpected ways that would keep them relevant and have more people finding qualities to resonate with. The Disney company majorly relies on their characters. That's what drives their theme parks, merchandising, and overall identity. So it makes sense for them to want to make their big budget blockbusters revolve around those characters, but that doesn't mean they have to be remakes. If anything, with the way they're approaching them, it's diluting the brand. Okay, so the concept of uniting the aquatic-based Disney characters of Ariel and Moana would serve multiple functions. Yes, it's been a long time coming for Disney princesses to come together for their own film. I mean, despite being branded together for decades, the first time the princesses ever interacted in a film was in Wreck-It Ralph 2, and they were the main reason anyone went to see that movie, so yeah, just for the sake of fun and excitement, it'd be interesting to see. Ever heard of fun? But it would also be a much-needed opportunity for Halle Bailey to play Ariel again, and this time be fully supported by the creative team, the filmmakers, and producers, instead of having them do less than the bare minimum to allow her to shine, going out of their way to hold her back from maximum slayage, taking away her big Disney princess moment, not delivering on the vision of having her in that role, and then leaving her to the wolves. Did her so dirty. Like, she had to do all the work herself, and she still very much shined as the character because she's perfect for it, but the filmmakers of The Little Mermaid put in no effort and inadvertently fueled the negativity she was receiving. They gave easy ammunition for criticism, which could have and should have been easily avoided. When you cast a black actress in a role traditionally seen as white, there's inevitably going to be backlash. There's going to be a built-in hate campaign because that's the world we live in, unfortunately. Your job as the filmmaker, as the decision maker, as the one who cast her, is to give the actress the tools she needs to silence the haters, prove them wrong, and get as many people on her side as possible. Get as many people to see her as the character as possible. And though it's not completely realistic to expect the ignorance to fully shut down, because some simply won't ever look past the shade of someone's skin, you better do everything you possibly can to make her shine. And how do you expect to do that if you remove all her extravagant costumes that people are anticipating, suck all the fantasy out of the environments, and take away key iconic elements that are unique to the character, like her essential vibrant hair that is the main thing that makes the character distinguishable? By doing stuff like this, the filmmakers were literally inviting people to point to her and say, "That's not Ariel." They made it so easy for people to dismiss her casting, and she deserves better. I need redemption. If I have Halle Bailey as Ariel in a movie, she's sporting vibrant red hair as the character requires. She's wearing several extravagant costume pieces and opulent ball gowns, and the environments are going to be fantastical to complement Halle's ethereal, otherworldly essence. I mean, that's just common sense. You have greatness right in front of you. How do you fumble? So anyway, a direct sequel to the live-action Little Mermaid may be seen as a risk for Disney since the film didn't meet their expectations at the box office, mostly due to Disney live-action fatigue and the rise of Disney Plus streaming. In addition to the film simply not looking very appealing, which fueled the cult-like racist hate campaigns even more, the film didn't look very good, so it was easy to criticize, easy to pile onto the negativity. So there were multiple factors involved in the film's underwhelming box office performance, but it wasn't a flop, it still turned a profit, just nowhere near what was expected. However, the fact that it wasn't a billion-dollar smash success gives people the idea that it was a flop. Trolls and racists are able to twist the truth to claim that it was an absolute failure, and the only explanation for it is because Ariel was black. The amount of trolls I see proudly declaring the film to be a financial disaster and that people didn't want to see a black Ariel, so nobody showed up. As much as those morons are responsible for their own ignorance, I can't help but blame Disney, Rob Marshall, and all the creatives behind The Little Mermaid for making it easier for people to make those claims and perpetuate that idea that the film's shortcomings can simply be boiled down to people, quote-unquote, not wanting Ariel to be black. And I hope Disney doesn't buy into that narrative, because a black-led Little Mermaid film could have easily surpassed $1 billion at the box office under different creative circumstances. Yes, I do believe racism was a factor, but had the film been more fantastical, had it been more ambitious, had it been more impressive, had it been more groundbreaking in terms of technology and visuals, had it been an actual achievement, more people would have been eager to see it. Most people in my personal life had no desire to watch the film after the trailers were released, not because Ariel was black, but because it didn't look worth seeing. Even disregarding the Disney live-action fatigue, it looked lackluster and underwhelming. Even though The Lion King was one of the worst live-action adaptations, people still had to see it because the technology was groundbreaking. The Avatar films weren't the massive successes they were because of the story and characters, it's the visuals. The Little Mermaid is the type of story where you could do absolutely breathtaking, triumphant, unbelievable things in terms of visuals and pushing the boundaries of filmmaking technology, and that would automatically make it a must-see. But Rob Marshall is not ambitious, skilled, imaginative, or creative enough to do that. In fact, he's not even competent enough to at least make the film look wondrous and enchanting. So he made a dull, dry, bland film, and Halle Bailey saved it from being completely disposable, yet the blame falsely goes on her for the lackluster box office performance. This is the main reason why Halle Bailey should reprise her role as Ariel in a new film. Disney needs to double down, redeem their shortcomings, and not let incel trolls think they've won. The perfect opportunity for Disney would be to break the mold, rework this live-action Moana film, bring the character of Moana to life for the first time in an original narrative, bring Halle Bailey's Ariel into the mix and allow her to thrive as the character, make the film like a more fun, fantastical, feminine take on Pirates of the Caribbean, hire a skilled filmmaker with a potent vision, aim to be a genuinely spectacular film with a strong script and impressive visuals, astonish us with boundary-pushing technology, people will be seated. If you're going to continue with IP-driven cinema, you need to try a different approach, and I think this would be something exciting that people wouldn't expect. And it could also act as a template for how to move forward with Disney live-action films, whether that be teaming up other Disney princesses like Cinderella and Belle, or other Disney characters like Hercules and Aladdin, or bringing them all together. But the fact is, Disney live-action films only tend to be successful when they're based around pre-existing characters, so why not bring those characters into new narratives, take them to exciting places, use them as a catalyst for compelling original stories? Make creative swings. I don't think we need any movie. I don't think any movie needs to exist. I think quality justifies any movie's existence. But with that said, We don't need a live-action Moana remake. We especially don't need that. I think it'd benefit Disney in the long run to utilize their iconic characters in a different way than just simply retelling the stories we already know, especially given how they've been doing it. Showing these characters in new circumstances would do more for their character development and evolution and relevance than trying to correct in live action whatever you think didn't work the first go round in animation. And I don't know if I'm fully able to sell you on this Moana Ariel movie strictly through verbal means, but I promise you what I'm picturing in my head is spectacular and fun. Do you know what fun is? That's why you go to Disney parks. So ideally, this Moana Ariel movie would take place after both the original stories of Moana and The Little Mermaid, and maybe would revolve around a mysterious disturbance in the ocean threatening both Moana's and Ariel's communities. They eventually cross paths due to them both being curious, adventurous, and protective of their loved ones, and they decide to embark on a perilous journey to put a stop to whatever is causing the chaos, encountering mythical creatures, ancient sea legends, etc. That vague concept might sound too generic, and I'd suggest they take that general idea to create a legitimately intriguing story that works, even if you aren't familiar with Moana or Ariel. Make it a 4-quadrant blockbuster event, make it epic. Mermaids, sea gods, creatures, opulent kingdoms. Doing this instead of simply remaking Moana would serve so many functions, check so many boxes, could potentially right some wrongs, and could be the key to a new path for Disney. I hope I articulated my reasons well enough to justify why specifically I think the Moana movie should be retooled into this movie and why Halle as Ariel should be included, not just to make it an exclusive Moana movie, to make it an original story with live action Disney characters. Okay, what do you think? What would you like the story to be? What would you like to see? Let me know all your thoughts, unless your thoughts are annoying. Yeah, okay. Bye.